What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Kevin Jackwitz. This is the Kaged Review, and this is a review for Pet Semetary 2019. Went out and saw it last night, and I was very pleasantly surprised. I remember the original Pet Semetary in '89 that came out, and it was kind of a guilty pleasure. It was something that I don't know it was necessarily as scary as a lot of people made it to be, but it was really, really fun. There was kind of a lack of sense of dread in the first movie, though, and that's where I think the second one kind of excels. The acting overall is very, very good, but one of the things about this movie that I think they did right was they made everything just a little bit creepier. And so you have it directed by Kevin Kolsch and Dennis Widmeyer, and they did a really good job of telling the story that I think maybe should have been told in the first movie, honestly. You have Louis Creed and his family. They moved to a kind of very rural home. A lot of woods in the back, and they soon find out that there is a pet cemetery very far back on their property. And this pet cemetery is kind of like this old Indian tribal ground that allows dead bodies to be reanimated. And that is the crux of the whole story. You have a lot of things that start to unfold here, and I'll save all the spoilers for the spoiler review. And there are things to spoil because it doesn't necessarily follow along the track of the first movie or the book. So if you're going in expecting it to be verbatim, it's not going to be. But that was a good thing. I think the choices they made for this movie really sold very well. And there were a lot of things that they apparently wanted to do that they needed to do by changing things up a little bit. And they wanted to kind of tell the story of how do you tell a child about death? How do you bring up this subject? And they touched on that subject in the first movie, but they really dove into it a lot deeper here. So you have Jason Clarke as Louis Creed. He's the father of the family. And I really liked his performance. I will say that his character wasn't entirely fleshed out. He was there. You didn't really have a backstory. You didn't have an understanding for his reasonings for why he's doing things. You can kind of gather why a father would be making the choices he makes in this movie just by, caring about your family. But there's nothing really to back that up. So he did a great job with his performance. I just wish he would have been given a little bit more to work with. Judd Crandall. John Lithgow had some very big shoes to fill with Fred Gwynne. Fred Gwynne played the original Judd Crandall in the first movie. And he was the best part of that movie, to be very honest. I think that he brought a little bit of a heart to the movie that probably wouldn't have been there without. John Lithgow is kind of the same way. John Lithgow, I'll be honest, I thought that was such a weird choice. Because I've never really gravitated toward Lithgow, and he's never really impressed me up until now. Like, I thought this was a really good performance from John Lithgow. I really do. I think he nailed this. And I was really happy to see that because, again, when I saw the trailers, I was a little apprehensive, but he did very, very well with this. Amy Seimetz, who plays Rachel Creed, is probably the most fleshed out character in the whole movie. You get the backstory of why she is the way she is, and the backstory with her sister, which if you've seen the first movie, you already know what I'm talking about. If not, we'll save it for spoilers. But that relationship really bases a lot of her decisions later on in the movie. And so I thought it was very cool. Easily the most fleshed out character. And she does a very, very good job. Amy, I'm not very familiar with Amy Seimetz, but really impressed. I think the person I'm most impressed with is Jete Lawrence, and I hope I'm saying that right. It's got the little accent after the E. So I'm going with Jete Lawrence. She plays Ellie Creed, young actress, and sometimes with kid actors and actresses, it can be hit or miss. And this was definitely a hit. She nailed this. And honestly, a lot of this movie was dependent on Jete's performance. And she had to be able to use a lot of good facial inflection. She had to learn how to be very creepy. And it worked very, very well. It really just home run. I can't really talk too much about her character other than that at the moment, because it'll just give way too much away. But I was super impressed. So the overall theme here is, you know, teaching deaf to kids. And if you had the chance, would you spare them from learning that lesson? And of course, things are going to go awry, as they always do in Stephen King book. And I really liked the third act more than anything. This is one of those rare movies where it progressively gets better and better and better, which is the way Stephen King novels go. I mean, he'll set up a lot of stuff. And in the first half of the movie, there is a lot of explaining. There's a lot of, you know, exposition. And they're having to, you know, make this movie idiot-proof. That's our audience nowadays. What can you say? So, you know, there's a lot of dialogue talking about what the Pet Semetary is and, you know, past events and things like that. Once you get into bringing church back, which is the beginning of the whole thing, you know, you kind of know that automatically. Church is their cat. Things get really creepy. And one thing I really loved about this movie in particular is that the first movie, Church came back, he was a little pissed off, he's hissing at people, wasn't really too creepy. They really made Church creepy as hell in this movie. Like, when the cat came back, there were some things that were just like, okay, yeah, that's a little nuts. And Church actually has kind of a pivotal part in this movie. The cat himself, which I loved. I think that's something that they really could have used in the first movie. But to do it here, the way they did it, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was literally a cause and effect. And that, to me, was what really sold it. And then, from there, the chaos ensues, and I'll just have to save everything else for spoilers. I really did like this movie. I really did. Like I said, there was a lot of explaining everything at the, you know, first act. But I think once they got past that, it really picked up pace. It really made you uncomfortable in some ways. So it did a very good job. And I think it's just as good, if not even a little better than the first movie. I really loved the first movie. I really did. Just, you know, kind of like as a guilty pleasure. But this, I think, really nailed it. So I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed this. As far as the story, I mean, I don't think you could get much better. To think the creative choices they made to get where they were going was very, very cool. So that's where I'm at, ladies and gentlemen. 7 out of 10. If you've seen the movie, save the spoilers for the spoiler review. My name is Kevin Jackowitz. Please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share. Kaged Nation, out.